This is RetRead Podcast.
We take a deep dive into the Fear Street series
And review other books we've read.
I'm Serge.
And I'm Anna.
We're happy you can join us.
Hey there, RetReaders.
Hey, and welcome back to another exciting episode of RetRead Podcast.
It's been a while.
Yeah, but we're glad to be back, and we're definitely looking forward to coming out with some more exciting content for all of you, our beloved listeners.
So we're glad to be back to review Fear Street books and all that, but Serge, didn't you just read a trilogy that you loved?
I did, and I reviewed it on our most recent episode of RetRead Podcast, so
fuck.
listen to our previous episode if you want to hear my review
Wait,
of N.K. Jemison's.
Do we have anything to review?
Well, I seem to recall that you, Anna, co-host of RetRead Podcast, have just recently read a YA book that you loathed and gave 1 out of 5 stars on Goodreads. Maybe we could talk about that book.
I tend to not like bashing books in our podcast.
Okay, yeah. We want to punch up, not punch down. We're not going to punch down at some, shitty writer that doesn't know what the fuck they're doing.
This book is a 3.74 on Goodreads, first of all. And
so that is punching up. Screw them.
And also,
dude.
she's like a really big author.
Take them down a few pegs. That's what I say.
Not taking her down a few pegs.
Take them down all the pegs.
She has
down to the gutter.
So many books in different
Stomp
series.
her while she's down.
She's been writing since the early aughts. She writes a lot of new adult type books, or YA, I guess is her new foray. I have no clue. Her name is Abby Glines. I'm sure a lot of people have read her books. She's made the New York Times bestseller list. She's been number 1 on the New York Times bestseller list, USA Today, Wall Street Journal. So it's not really punching down. She doesn't need us. She's too big for us.
Listen, we are an equal opportunity shitter on, and so if we're gonna shit all over Joe Hill, then we might as well express our views about this wonderful author over here, which, based on what you've told me, I'm pretty sure Joe Hill is a little bit better. Maybe our gripes with him seem more minute compared to the monstrous crimes you've been accusing her of in our private conversation.
Crimes? That's a bit strong. I did not like her book. I've been in a book rut recently. Been really struggling with some books that I'm in the middle of. I needed something to just help me along. And for me, that's usually a realistic contemporary YA book. I'm a sucker for those. And so I went to the local library. I was just browsing, and I didn't want to bother the librarian because she was busy with actual, people who are YA.
By the way, if I may interject here, the Broken Earth trilogy by N.K. Jemisin is sitting on our shelf, highly recommended by me, and yet you have...
It's not YA, it's not contemporary, it's not, I don't know.
It's wonderful, it's a great respite from all the garbage that this book seems to be.
Yes, but I wanted something contemporary and YA, and garbage or not, I had fun with it. I am a big fan of this show called Friday Night Lights. So I went to the library and I saw this book, and it has a football field and it has people on the football field, and I was like, ooh, it's a YA Friday Night Lights thing. I'm totally into that.
It even has the high school letter jacket lettering for the title.
It's called Losing the Field. I was like, let's do it. I need a new Friday Night Lights thing in my life. So then I started reading it, and I was like, oh, well, it's a little problematic, but let's keep going. And then, as I kept going, it just got, worse and worse and worse and worse. It's a quick and easy read, so I knew I could finish it. And I wanted to see if the author would go the horrific way that I thought she was gonna go, and yes, she did. Basically, it's a book about a girl. She, in this town in Alabama, all her life, she's been really fat, apparently. How the author writes it is basically she has no friends, and everyone hates her because she's fat. And first of all, I was a big child. I had friends, I don't know. But apparently, in this town she's in, the classmates don't want to be friends with her, the teachers judge her, everyone in the town judges her for being fat. That's kind of weird, but okay. There's this one kid that's really nice to her, he stands up for her when people can't pronounce her name,
What was her name, by the way?
Tallulah.
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 Oh, that's not that bad.
Well, people couldn't figure out how to pronounce it. So he would be like, no, her name's Tallulah, how hard is it? Talk to her oh, hey, that test was, whatever. And, he was that kid. Her last day of junior year of high school, she and him have a conversation, and as they're walking away, his friend makes a really fat-shaming joke. The boy, Nash, laughs at it. So Tallulah is very upset that this one kid who's been nice to her entire life has laughed at a fat joke, and she decides that she needs to get revenge. So she spends the rest of the summer losing weight.
Was the joke funny, though?
He says something like, I don't want to see her in a bathing suit.
Oh, that's not that funny.
It's not funny at all.
They could have at least made it a funny joke.
There's no, it's not.
The guy could be redeemable.
There's really not anything funny about making fun of someone who's like overweight. I'm just going to tell you, as someone who was like overweight, I was very self-conscious about it. And like, no matter how funny the joke is, to the person making it or to the person listening, it is like hurtful, destroys you inside.
No, I get that. Obviously, like the girl's destroyed inside, but
there's no but.
No, okay, so hear me out.
No,
let me finish.
Uh-huh.
Obviously, it's bad for her, but as somebody that is listening to a joke, if the joke is like really devastatingly hilarious and the delivery is just like right on point, sometimes you just can't help but laugh.
You're disgusting and a repugnant person. Anyway, moving on. So she basically spends the entire summer like walking 5 miles a day. She stops eating dessert. She drinks water all the time. And when she comes in first day of senior year, no one can recognize her. She's skinny, and because she's so skinny, she's beautiful. And all the guys are hitting on her and want to bang her. And all the girls hate her because she's like hot. So first of all, like that whole dynamic is just really messed up.
Yeah, I mean, that does sound pretty messed up. Also, it doesn't make sense, right? Because if she was that fat, then like the skin wouldn't have shrunk. So she'd have like these weird folds of skin and stuff. So she wouldn't actually be that hot.
Everything you say is like just offensive in some way. But no, first of all, like there is credence to that. And also, second of all, Alabama has an adult obesity rate of 36.3% as of 2017. So if Tallulah is overweight, obese to the extent that people are like shunning her from society, 3 months to look like the hottest person in the school. My senior year of high school, I lost 30 pounds. I did a lot of bike riding and I did running. And you know what else I did? I ate like an apple a day. Sometimes I wouldn't eat anything.
This is not recommended. Kids, this is really bad. Do not do this because this is like a really terrible, terrible thing to do. And
well, I'm
it's
not
very
advocating
bad for your health.
it. It was awful for my health, and it's like impacted me even now. To this day, like more than a decade later, it has affected my health. First of all, this author plays into this weird thing, like, if you're fat, it must be because you're lazy. And it's like, there's a lot of other things that go into it. For instance, Tallulah is living with her mother, a single mom. At one point, she talks about how, like, they were so poor that when the car broke down, she had to eat peanut butter sandwiches for, like, a month or two because they couldn't afford anything else. And it is a well-known fact that people who are at a lower income level, who are living in poverty, they tend to be heavier because of the type of foods they can buy. Tallulah clearly would have to do some really insanely unhealthy things to go from someone who is obese to be shunned from society and disgusting to everyone to like the hottest supermodel ever. Like that is just, it boggles the mind to me, first of all. Like I can't believe like someone would write something like as insane as that. And then, like, the slut shaming, like, all the girls, Tallulah, like, never, she was so fat that no boy would ever touch her. So, therefore, she's, like, pure and virginal. And all the other girls, they're just sluts. They just want to have sex with the guys, and they're just flirting with guys, and they only have one thing on their mind. And all the other guys, because this book is a dual narrative. It goes from Nash to Tallulah. So, in Nash's eyes, all those other girls, they're just disgusting. They just want to have sex. They're already tainted, by their previous experiences and things they've done with other guys. But Tallulah, she's special because she's so pure and innocent, and it's like, that is gross. And
yeah,
how the other girls treat Tallulah because like she's suddenly hot, like, oh, how dare she be pretty, like, you used to be fat but now you're like pretty, and that's disgusting because now like all the guys want to hit on you clearly just want to have sex with all the other guys, and ew, you're gross. And then there's like a whole plot point where like this teacher is like hitting on her, and then like he like pushes himself and forces himself onto her. And for some reason, like...
That's so terrible.
Well, yes, that is terrible in itself. But then, for some reason, all the other students have decided that she is a slut. And they write slut and stuff, and they slut-shame her, like, on her locker. They like...
Oh, because she gets abused by,
yeah,
like,
by a teacher. Because the teacher is hot. And all the girls in the school are flirting with the teacher. And then one of the boys even says to one of the girls, like, you're only upset because he was hitting on her and not you, and like you would have been okay with it if it were you. And it's like, why is any of this okay? Why are none of the other teachers in school like immediately putting an end to this? That's just so weird. It's like this is an absurd degree of like slut shaming, and like I get society has different standards for men and women, but I'm pretty sure when it comes to statutory rape, like we all agree, it's bad. If we move on from like the slut shaming and the fat shaming and Tallulah, we can talk about Nash's character. He was like this golden boy football player. They're a good football team, but he was probably the only one that would make it to Division I college. schools like Alabama were sniffing around him and all that good stuff, which Alabama is one of the best football programs in the country. I love college football, so I can talk about that.
Roll Tide.
Go Blue. But he has this career-ending injury. He tore his ACL, tore his MCL, and then hurt his ankle. I'm not going to bother talking about that. Somehow, he's supposed to be like this aspirational boyfriend that girls read and go, oh yeah, he's such a good guy. He treated her nicely. And it's like, do you want a fucking reward or like award for saying hello to a girl? That's the standard we're holding people up to? There's this one.
He's like this star football player that also said hello and acknowledged the fat girl. So, that's something.
He wavers between like angry all the time because of like his injury and like sort of treats everyone like crap, but then like, she must love me and I am obsessed with her and how dare she talk to other guys, and like, okay, that's weird. And then he notices that this teacher is hitting on Tallulah and he thinks she's so innocent. She doesn't understand what's going on. Now I hope that she doesn't get hurt. And then he witnesses the teacher kissing Tallulah for the first time. And instead of like this whole thing that he's been going on for like chapters, like, man, I don't like him. I don't like the look of him. I don't like how he's looking at her. This is wrong. He's clearly a bad news. When he sees the kiss, he doesn't go, oh my God, I need to do something. I need to help her. He rages about what a slut Tallulah is and like storms off because, I don't know. Dude, you knew this guy was trouble, and yet when he does the thing that you expected him to do, you flip and then blame the girl. At that point, Tallulah like runs out of the classroom, runs to the bathroom to hide from the teacher, and the teacher runs after her and like corners her in the bathroom. It's like this whole messed up thing.
Yo, he should have at least gone into the bathroom to like make sure the teacher didn't do some like weird freaking shit in there, like, I don't know, rape her or some
Oh no,
thing.
He had already like stormed off with his friend to smoke pot.
You know what's interesting though? It's like, the female character is like really strong and has this willpower to, I don't know, do whatever the heck she did to like lose like an impossible amount of weight
in 3 months,
and also like shrink her skin bags and stuff. But this guy, he comes back. We've all heard about like athletes getting that kind of injury, and it's like maybe his doctors told him it's hopeless or whatever, but like a lot of people, they keep fighting anyway.
Well, he goes to rehab.
Yeah, but maybe instead of like feeling sorry for himself, he should just be focusing on his rehab and trying to do the best that he can.
Well, he did. According to the book, he has a limp that will never go away. His career, maybe he was a running back. I don't really remember. I already returned the book to the library. I couldn't give any more fucks. But like,
well, he should have pulled that limp up by its bootstraps and like persevered or something. I don't know. That's what I'm saying. If she's like allowed to like achieve the unachievable, maybe he should try a little harder.
A book can only be so unbelievable. It was the whole thing, like, everything about it just bothered me. Like, he as a character bothered me. Their relationship. They go on, I think, 1 date, maybe 2 dates. They go on 1 date, and it goes okay. And then their second date is them, like, almost having sex, but not, because his parents are coming home or something like that. They just keep having, like, these little things where they go, oh, I don't like how he did that. Oh, I don't like how she did that. And then at the end of the book, it's like, I love you, I need you. And it's like, you guys have had like zero interaction. Like, what the hell is going on here? This whole book is just, it escalated quickly. It was just so fast paced. I think that's why I kept reading, because it's like nothing slows down. There's nothing slowing down. It's just like one big thing after another. When you're in the character's head, like for instance, Tallulah says like she's a book blogger and she loves like all these kinds of books. She never reads in this book. She never sits back and goes, yep. And then I decided that I would just sit back and relax with a good book. And, I'm really glad. Nothing about her book blogging. So that doesn't make any sense. It's always her thoughts about either being fat, being skinny now, or her relationship or lack thereof with Nash and like his friends.
Well, that's kind of realistic. I mean, like, I'm a book podcaster, and yet you will hardly catch me in the act of reading anything.
But you don't you're not like necessarily one track minded. Like, you think about other things throughout the day. For instance, like, you just rebuilt your computer, so you talk about Linux a lot, or like the different parts of your computer. You talk about your work. You talk about like other things. There are other aspects of you every day. Whereas when you are in these characters' heads, there is like no other aspects. It's weird.
Okay, so they're two-dimensional rather than being multifaceted as people would be.
And let me tell you, she's a book blogger, so then when this famous YouTube vlogger moves to town, she doesn't know what a vlogger is. And neither does the male main character, Nash. He's like, what's a vlogger? These are high schoolers. I don't know how you don't know what a vlogger is.
I guess that shows that the author thinks that it's believable for a high schooler to not know what a vlogger is. And
because she didn't know what a vlogger was. She had to have her daughter explain to her what a vlogger
it
is.
It shows her age, basically, right? Because she must be like maybe older than us at this point if she doesn't know what a vlogger is.
Well, if she has a daughter in high school.
Okay, yes, definitely. To a certain extent, this does represent certain like cliques in high school are this shallow, for sure. But no extent should everyone be like this in high school. I feel like we all go through a phase where we're really mean and really shallow. I think like in high school, a lot of people line up being in the same like phase of their life where they're like that. I mean, certainly I think the shallowest and meanest phase of my life was probably like around high school. I don't know about you, but like...
I don't know, you're still pretty mean and shallow.
No, but seriously though, like when you're immature, you're going to laugh at dumb jokes that are hurtful. You're going to say hurtful things and not consider other people's feelings, and that's normal. And like I feel like to a certain extent it is realistic that high schoolers would be this stupid, this shallow, this mean. That is kind of a high school stereotype.
But all of them?
Yeah, that's the part where it kind of like goes like, you can always fall back to like another social group, find other friends that are not mean or cliquey or catty or whatever the word is. I don't know, if you're out there and you're in high school and you're listening right now, you're going through like the same kind of situation where like everybody's like really shitty, look around you and see if there's other people, because maybe you're just hanging out with the wrong crowd. There are like non-shitty people out there, I promise.
I mean, it kind of reminded me of the book Blubber by Judy Blume. Do you remember that?
Nope.
Where, like, the girl's called Blubber because she's, like, a little heavier than the rest of the girls. All the girls, like, gang up on her. After a twist of fate, all the other girls, including Blubber, pick on, like, the skinniest girl in class. But that's, like, 3rd grade. This book was just, like, so stupid. And then, when I was on Goodreads, like, I had to review this book, I realized I had read the first book in this series, which I didn't remember that I had read, which I had also given 1 star. And basically, I had the same issues. It was, like, slut-shaming, toxic guys, horrible relationship. I am just like not a fan of this particular series by Abby Glines. I mean, I'm sure I have a lot more stuff to complain about that I don't remember and I don't feel like clicking on my Goodreads to read about, but I gave it 1 star out of 5. I was not a fan. Maybe it's just a me thing for a lot of these topics. Like, I think slut shaming is despicable and I think like it is a thing, but it's not as big a thing, especially in the way that it's portrayed. You know, like Friday Night Lights had a similar thing with slut shaming, but like it was done a lot better in a way that made sense. The way it's done in this book doesn't make sense. The fat shaming thing, like I can't even wrap my head around like this whole like weight loss storyline. Like I said, I did like something really stupid back in high school and lost a ton of weight, and I thought I looked good, but it was not worth like what it put me through now. The toxic masculinity, toxic relationship. And like, even if like you don't care about any of these things and you think you'd enjoy the book, there's also like, spoiler alert, and I don't really care about spoiling this book because I don't give a fuck. She introduces a character like halfway through and then like kills him a few chapters later. There's no point in introducing this character. I don't know why she did that. There's no point to him. He didn't add to the story. He distracted from the story. He took up pages. His entire story is baffling. And the fact that it has a 3.74 on Goodreads is baffling.
That is baffling. I mean, I guess it attracts a certain kind of audience, and those people tend to like it, but you picked it up based on its cover, and you pretty much hated it, so I guess it just doesn't gel.
Yeah, I'm still looking for that YA Friday Night Lights book. I don't know. You know, there was one aspect of the book I liked. It was the mother-daughter relationship between Tallulah and her mom. They have like 4 scenes together because parents are not important in YA books like this. But like she had like a very Lorelai-Rory type relationship, and like I'm a big fan of Gilmore Girls. Like her mom was basically Lorelai who can bake. That would have been really great to like focus on like how her mom had viewed like her weight loss and like what was happening to her in school, how she wanted her senior year to be really special and really different. And just like having like the mom-daughter conversations would have had like a really nice grounding aspect to this book. Because like the few conversations they did have, I was like, oh, I really want to know more about this. Same with Nash and his parents. Like it's this football golden boy has lost his entire football future. Instead of dealing with their kid has lost his chance at like a good scholarship at a good school, and now they have to figure out college without a scholarship coming his way. Like that would have been interesting too. Like the family aspects of the story would have been a lot more interesting than the school aspects. But that didn't happen. And I think that's what I'm looking for when I talk about like a Friday Night Lights thing. Because at the end of the day, like what grounded Friday Night Lights were like the family aspects of things.
I think your problem here is that you're not going to find that kind of depth in a YA. Friday Night Lights is not a YA show. It's aimed at adults, not aimed at kids. It doesn't focus on like the kids' like day-to-day school life. It looks at the adults too, and it looks at the coach's struggle and his relationship with his wife,
yes.
and the other school administration and the teachers. It takes the whole picture into account, which is more of an adult genre, whereas YA really does focus on the kid's point of view. And maybe kids like really don't give a crap about college.
I disagree with that because she has one conversation with a kid who like wants to get a scholarship to Ole Miss or something. But I would disagree that like YA you can't get deep storylines. Like for instance, The Astonishing Color of After by Emily X. Arpan is one of my favorite books that I read last year, and I thought that was like a book full of depth and like beauty, and it focused on family and loss and suicide and like how a family recuperates from one of their loved ones killing themselves. I would disagree completely that like you can't get something deep and like really
Is that a
interesting.
YA novel?
Yes, it is.
Does she classify it as a YA novel?
Yes, she does.
Okay.
So, I disagree with you completely. I do agree, like, Friday Night Lights does cover things like the entire family and systemic racism, but, like, that's something that YA covers as well. I just feel like this book was a very shallow version of what it could have been. Because I disagree. YA can cover all the stuff I'm looking for from, like, a Friday Night Lights thing. Maybe with less focus on the parents, I agree. They're not going to focus on the football coach and his wife and, like, their struggles and his, like, career like they did in Friday Night Lights or the Boosters. I acknowledge that, but Friday Night Lights did focus on the day-to-day issues of the students, of the kids there. It was very in-depth, but this book didn't do that.
I get it. So basically what we're saying is the genre of YA does leave room for this in-depth look at a story. However, the author of this particular book was unable to cover that range because they are shallow and narrow-minded.
Okay.
And just generally a terrible author.
Okay, we don't need a
What's
text
the author's name
on
again?
the author. Let's rein surge back a little bit, and then we can just say, like, this particular book was shallow, and the previous book I read was shallow.
And therefore...
And a lot of issues. And therefore, if you're looking for a YA Friday Night Lights book, this is not it.
Nor anything by this author.
Well,
right?
I've only read the first book in the series and the fourth book in the series, so I don't know.
All right, moving on. I guess you gave it 1 star out of 5. You definitely haven't, convinced me that I should give it a shot. Certainly, I think if you're a RetRead listener and you've generally followed our recommendations, stay away from this author, particularly because it's a lost cause. Speaking of lost causes, coming up after the intermission...
We're going to review and discuss... Fear Street, The Thrill Club. They're dying to join.
And we're back. Let's do the usual thing and start with our prediction accuracy. I'm going to go first. I thought that the ghost of Sarah Fear was going to come back to haunt a club of kids that are investigating the occult.
Nope.
True that, but I also thought that members of the club are dying.
Duh.
Right, but then I predicted that there would be a female murderer. And I predicted there would be a female victim.
Yeah.
And then, finally, for the final finishing blow, I said the murder weapon would be made to look like an accident.
That's not quite the finishing blow, because then you also said...
Yeah, admittedly, I said that the murder victim would be shoved down the stairs. Your turn, Anna.
Alright, so I said it'd be a thrill-seeking club dying during their activities.
It's kind of true.
It's kind of true. I said it'd be a female murderer.
Yeah, okay.
I said there'd be a female victim.
Yeah.
And I said there'd be a stabbing.
Oh my god. You were so right.
Bing, bing.
How'd you do that? You keep getting these things, on point every time, and I just, don't do as well as you.
It's not going to be a Sarah Fear book with just a regular Fear Street book, right?
You know,
it's
my problem
like a super thriller or something.
When I hit that high point, when I predicted the flamethrower murder weapon, and then I got it right, ever since then I've been going for, the zany predictions, trying to, chase that high. It's not happening. I really need to dial it back a little bit on the prediction.
Alright, what's this book about?
A group of friends tell each other horror stories, a la the Midnight Society from Are You Afraid of the Dark?
It's an odd choice for the stories to feature other members of the group facing gruesome deaths, but now these stories are coming true.
Dun dun dun!
So we got a bunch of characters, and they're on the Thrill Club, so let's just start with our protagonist.
Talia
Blanton. She has long blonde silky hair with clear blue eyes. She's dating Seth, another member of the group, and she usually has Seth do all her work, like her homework or writing the stories that she tells, and she takes all the credit. Her mom's a lawyer. Her dad's an architect with ideas of how to spruce up Shadyside's parks and municipal buildings, and her brother Dave is a sophomore at Duke, and she hopes to go to UC Berkeley.
Yeah, so it sounds like her family's got it all figured out.
Except for the fact that she's a cheater.
Yeah, her family's all figured out, and she's kind of so overwhelmed with all the stuff she's taken on that she can't seem to do any of it. Which makes me wonder, what does she do with her free time? But anyway, moving on to Seth Varner. He is tall, thin, and has wavy dark hair. An intense, handsome face is what his face looks like. And his dad has recently died on a more somber note, and he is buried at the new cemetery at Old Mill Road. He usually wears dark jeans and a camo t-shirt, but that's only since his dad died. Like we mentioned earlier, he often does Talia's homework for her.
And he lives on Fear Street next door to Mara Drake, his ex-girlfriend, who is currently dating another member of the throw club, Rudy.
So she's a chubby redheaded girl with wide green eyes and plenty of freckles on her plain round face. Wow. Thank you, R.L. Stine.
Well, actually, now that you've mentioned R.L. Stine, this is actually the first book that he didn't write in the Fear Street series.
Oh my god. There's a ghost on Fear Street. A ghost writer. What? She also has short copper-colored hair, and, as we mentioned before, lives right next door to Seth. And their windows face each other, which is just like that music video by Taylor Swift. So cute!
We have Nessa Troy. She has dark brown hair with a delicate face and no other important features. So we just move right on to Rudy Phillips, who is currently dating Mara Drake.
He has brown eyes, gold wire-rimmed glasses, and has an 8-year-old brother called Pete.
And last, we have Shondell Carter. She's attractive, tall, and slender, with high cheekbones, beautiful hazel eyes, which is set off by her dark skin.
Whoa.
We have one of the few rare people of color in the Fear Street series.
Correct.
She has long legs and she's on the track team.
So we open up the book. It opens with a story by Talia about Shandell getting murdered in Fear Street Cemetery after a fight with Nessa.
But obviously it's not Talia who wrote the story, it was Seth, because he's been writing her stories, as we've been mentioning. But she's still proud that she's considered the best writer, but she didn't write the story. So they rotate locations where they meet, and I don't quite understand how they pick who tells the story. Clearly, Talia is not writing the stories, and they all know she's not writing the story, so I don't understand, why they still have her do it.
Well, everyone seems to love the story and is thrilled by it, except, obviously, Shandell, because, she gets murdered in the story.
She's upset that, why are they using real names anyway? That's so messed up.
Well, according to Talia, apparently using real names makes it more real and more scary, which is funny because now she's put in the position where she has to defend her story even though she's not the one that wrote it, which makes her upset even though she has no right being upset. It's actually a really funny setup because it puts her at odds with herself and the others in the room simultaneously.
Well, Shandell still disagrees with her and thinks it's fucked up, and don't use her name again for these dumb stories.
Now, there's a bit of a disagreement. You know what? Talia decides that she's gonna show Shandell what's what, and she actually stabs her with a knife, except, LOL, it's fake, and it was just a prank. It's just a prank, Shandell, don't get mad.
Shandell is now even less amused than she was before, and Shandell doesn't get mad. She gets even.
So watch out, Talia. At this point, it's a wrap because everyone just wants to go home and finish their homework, or whatever. Nobody wants to deal with the awkwardness of this situation.
Talia stays behind with Seth so they can work on her math homework together. Or really, she can watch Seth do her math homework for her.
Yeah, or that was the plan, except that, lately, Seth has been, a little bit off. Talia is upset that Seth has been depressed and distant lately. He's been smiling less. He's not as happy as he used to be.
It was just a week or so ago that his dad fucking died and his mom can't pay their mortgage.
Yeah, but you know what? He should be more sensitive and attentive to her.
He was the one that found his body.
Oh, his dad's body?
Yes.
Oh.
But you know what?
But he should still be more sensitive.
How dare he be depressed?
Exactly. Yes, now we're on the same page. So, what is interesting, though, is that his dad's occupation was a little bit out there. And you know what he was doing? He was actually out studying the Aboriginal tribes of Papua New Guinea. And he was actually listening to all these tapes they recorded over there. Specifically, he kept listening to one tape over and over again that was labeled transfer tape. He was actually found dead while listening to that tape.
Yes, and Seth found that in the tape deck. Seth actually insists on playing the tape for Talia, and they listen to it together in his bedroom. Seth closes his eyes and falls into a trance, chanting along with the tape. And these strange voices get faster and faster and faster as Seth is chanting along and he's going faster, and Talia needs to shake him to get him to snap out of whatever trance he's in.
Talia's head begins to hurt. And she really doesn't like the weird chanting music. It just makes her feel strange.
So after they get done with the homework, Talia walks home from Fear Street. She walks by the cemetery, and she hears someone running up behind her, and all of a sudden she's attacked.
Yeah, it's like it all goes like slow motion. Her thoughts race through her head, and she's like, oh my god, what am I gonna do? She thinks of the only thing that she can possibly do. She loses her knife in an attempt to pull it out for self-defense. But actually, it turns out she didn't need the knife because it's actually Shandell trying to scare her to get back at her for the story and for pulling the knife on her. Ironically, the knife is not lost. So, all is well because it's just Shandell. And as they walk through the cemetery, Shandell tells Talia that she should have used Mara's name in the story instead of Shandell's name. Because she was making goo-goo eyes at Seth. They gossip about Mara and Rudy as Talia thinks about how boring and plain Mara is. We were just talking about this, how catty high schoolers can be. Jeez. It turns out that Seth asked Talia out while he was still dating Mara. And they were actually together for a year at that point. Understandably, Mara was pissed about that. Shandell says that Talia did Mara dirty for going out with Seth, and that Seth and Talia won't even make it as a couple.
Talia is pissed at Shandell and is overcome with anger as they go their separate ways. So Talia has a nightmare about the crazy tape that Seth played her. She hears the chanting, the voices are going faster and faster, she's being chased in a maze, there's dogs barking, there's just noisy confusion. It's one of those unsettling dreams that people have once in a while.
Talia is pretty out of it and overly tired at school, and she doesn't know why. She's contemplating breaking up with Seth because he either follows her around like a dog or is depressed.
Can't he just get over his dad?
I know, it was like last week. Give me a break. She's decided that she'll lead him on for a while out of respect for his dead father, but...
How considerate.
And now we switch to Nessa's point of view. The next Thrill Club meeting is at her house. Everyone except Rudy is late, and Nessa is a bit upset because she has homework to do, and, this thing can't run on forever. Shandell wanted to tell Nessa a secret, and Nessa is a bit concerned because Shandell is never late.
So Mara shows up next and suggests that Talia is probably late because Seth is still writing her story.
Oh, burn! Rudy is tired of hearing about this, and Mara asks Rudy, whose side is he on? Nessa is smart enough to sit this one out.
That is like a really smart choice.
Mara continues going on and on about how Talia is just using Seth and how pathetic it is.
Well, Nessa is tired of biting her tongue, and she just says that, you know what? Seth is letting her do that to him, and maybe just lay off a bit. And then Mara gets even more catty about it.
Well, thank goodness, because Seth arrives and cuts the argument off. And where's Talia?
Well, she finally shows up, but she's completely out of it.
Is she like drunk or something? Her head is foggy, and she could have sworn she left the house 25 minutes ago. And the walkover is only 10 minutes, so she can't figure out what's going on, or even why she's holding her sweatshirt instead of wearing it.
Now they're all pretty concerned about Shandell because she still hasn't shown up. Nessa calls Shandell, and Shandell's mom says that she had left 30 minutes ago. Shandell lives really close by, so she should have gotten there already.
Everyone decides they'll go off looking for Shandell, since Shandell lives so close by. As they gather in the car together, everyone notices that the right sleeve of Talia's sweatshirt has a massive blood stain. Or at least it looks like a blood stain. It's all like red and stuff. And she doesn't know how it got there or where it's from, but, it's a mystery, whatever. They drive to Shandell's house, and her parents are like, she's not here, we're kind of worried. Shouldn't she be at your place by now? So then they go to Canyon Road, I'm not sure why they go to Canyon Road.
Or they drive from Shandel's to Canyon Road to Fear Street and to the cemetery on Fear Street.
That's the thing that doesn't quite make sense because, honestly, there's like Shandel's house and there's Nessa's house. And it's like, okay, so there's like a path that you walk down. And I guess they said maybe you can cut through some other place. But then, like, why do they end up on Canyon Road? It doesn't make sense. But whatever. Once they're at the cemetery, something really, really traumatic happens.
They find Shandel's body along the fence of the cemetery. And someone has cut her neck. They do the smart thing and they call the police.
Yep.
And it's hectic. They're all brought to the police station. They're all questioned by the police. And they all feel like they're being accused of something. Because Talia is our protagonist for all intents and purposes, we see it from her point of view. And she says that the police were really cautious in how they questioned her. Because her mother is a lawyer and they were cognizant of that fact. So they didn't want to push things too far with her.
Although, like, maybe if they'd pushed a little harder, they would have found, like, a couple things that were maybe a little bit suspicious. Like, I don't know, the bloody sweatshirt she was carrying with her. How about that?
Well, when she gets home, she finds a knife covered in blood in her dresser drawer, and it's basically the real version of her joke knife.
So, Talia tells Seth about the knife 2 days later on the way to the memorial service, and they try to figure out who'd planted at her house, you know, aside from her.
After the funeral, the Thrill Club gathers at Alma's coffee house, which we've never heard of before, but whatever. And Nessa is completely broken up over all of this because Shandel was her best friend.
Mara spends the entire time staring at Talia accusingly, and finally asks her about the bloody sweatshirt. Mara had also noticed the similarities between Talia's story and the real-life events of Shandel's death.
Talia says that it was just ketchup and not blood and just leaves it at that.
That's very likely. So anyway, moving on, a few nights later, Talia gets stood up by Seth because his mom is not feeling well.
She's apparently been also depressed since her husband had died.
How uncaring of her. You know, she should really...
buck up.
Exactly. So, Talia tries to write a horror story on her own this time, but ends up zoning out completely.
Next thing she knows, there's a knocking on the door and the ringing of the doorbell, and she gets a visit from Detectives Monroe and Frazier.
Yep, it turns out that Shandel's mom received a call from Talia, where she actually confessed to murdering Shandel.
Talia has no clue what they're talking about, and after her parents get home, they question her for an hour.
But after this, rumors start flying in Shady Side High. She walks into the cafeteria, and suddenly everyone's conversations just stop. Even Mara and Nessa just stop talking and pretend they were talking about anything else.
Not her, obviously.
No. It's just a coincidence. We all stop talking as soon as you enter the room.
So Talia realizes that she just needs to leave.
Yep, she gotta clear her head or something.
And she runs into Rudy. Rudy pulls her into the gym because he wants to chat. And he just lets her know that he doesn't believe the rumors. He doesn't believe that she would do anything to Shandel. And then they end up kissing.
What? That came out of nowhere. They end up kissing?
Yes.
There's one problem with that.
They're both dating other people?
Aside from that, someone sees them, but runs out of the gym before they see who it was. That's the real problem.
Well, Talia decides that even though that kiss was a really good kiss, Seth is her boyfriend and Rudy would just be a friend. It was a friend kiss.
In my mind, while I was reading this book, and I just interject, I always pictured Rudy as Samwise Gamgee from Lord of the Rings.
Because he was Rudy.
Oh, snap, is that why?
Yes.
Wow, my subconscious has just played a trick on me. Anyway, she's really upset that Seth has been blowing her off lately, and he needs to get out of his funk and be a better boyfriend.
So Talia walks into school a few days later to find Nessa and Seth flirting with each other, and Talia is pissed.
Yeah, what the hey? Talia confronts them, and Nessa is like, yo, you called me last night, and you were like, I'm gonna break up with Seth, so I thought it was cool.
Talia has no clue what Nessa is talking about. And Nessa is just pissed that Talia is denying that she ever called her.
And Seth just doesn't know who to believe.
Oh, sucks to have two girls fighting over me.
Oh, what an inconvenience.
Well, 4 days later, Talia is doing her homework alone at home. She's tempted to call Seth for help because she's really fallen behind since the murder. But hasn't she just been falling behind since we've known her?
Yeah, she's got issues maybe. But anyway, they haven't really talked since she caught him flirting with Nessa, and she hasn't been able to tell him that she's been accepted to UC Berkeley. You know, rather than like hey, congrats, UC Berkeley, that's a good school. That's actually going to end up being like a contentious issue.
Oh, you think her parents paid someone and pretended that she was on the sailing team?
No.
What?
More like lacrosse or softball.
Someone knocks on the door, and you get one of those stupid Fear Street jump scare things. It's basically Seth wearing one of those Aboriginal masks from New Guinea, whatever.
So Talia gets to tell Seth about her acceptance to Berkeley. She's worried, I haven't told him yet. Here's her chance. Except Seth is upset because he's been wanting her to stay in town at their state school since they submitted their applications in January. Hey, boyfriend, girlfriend, submit their applications together, stay together forever. And all of a sudden it's like, California? That's so far away. From Ohio, we've predicted it all along.
Well, they move on to the next topic of the conversation. Seth has written another story to read at their next Thrill Club meeting. So the next Thrill Club meeting is at Rudy's house.
Right, yeah. How weird is that? Because she was going to write the story, right? But then she had that weird episode. Well, whatever.
So usually when Rudy has a Thrill Club meeting at his house, he has a stupid prank that he pulls on his friends.
And apparently it's always the same prank. So...
Yes, he always hangs something from, the pipes of his basement.
I bet Chantel really loved that prank.
Chandel?
Yeah.
The story that Seth has written basically involves Rudy trying to hang a ventriloquist dummy from the water pipes. And, since his basement is dark, he knows they'll freak out. And since he has a merit badge in tying knots from the scouts, he ties the noose for the dummy, but the noose is too small, so he decides that he needs to retie it. And then, for some insane reason, the Rudy in this story decides to test it on himself first, and it all goes horribly wrong, and he kicks the chair out from under himself, and, that's the story.
Yep, and then it turns out, he earned his merit badge because the noose works, so, congrats, you tied the knot correctly.
Talia thinks that Rudy will hate this story, and Seth is like, no, he won't, because he does the stupid prank every single time. He's gonna think it's funny.
Something tells me Seth is right. Rudy's gonna love this one.
The next day at school, Mara asks Talia about Seth. Mara thinks there's something wrong with Seth. She can look into his bedroom window, right? And she can see him pacing all night long, just walking back and forth. And when he's not pacing, he's going through, papers and tapes, and Mara just thinks there's something wrong.
I mean, Talia does feel bad for Seth, but she's more mad at Mara for prying into their business. How dare Mara look into Seth's private life, especially if they're not dating. Seth is her boyfriend, so that makes his private life her own property, and Mara is basically stealing for her. Talia doesn't see that Mara just wants what's best for Seth, and completely blows her off.
Talia then reveals to Mara that she's going to Rudy's early to help him set up for their meeting, and Mara is a little shocked by this. First of all, Rudy is her boyfriend. Why isn't she the one that's going early to help him set up?
Yeah, the shoe's on the other foot now. What's going on over here? But now we're going to go to Nessa's point of view, and isn't this interesting, right?
It's always from Nessa's point of view.
When certain something or other happens.
Well, I wonder what's going to happen.
Uh-oh.
Mara and Seth are already waiting on the porch, and no one is answering the door. After waiting a few minutes, they finally decide that they're tired of waiting outside. Talia was supposed to be in there with Rudy. They're clearly setting up, so they should just open the door, and, it's unlocked, so they go in, they go to the basement, and there's Rudy, hanging from the ceiling.
Mara and Seth are shocked and horrified. Nessa is laughing because she thinks it's a prank.
He's laughing her ass off, actually.
Yeah.
She just keeps going yep, that's hilarious, Rudy. We fell for it.
When it finally kicks in that it's not a prank, they all freak out.
So Seth is about to run upstairs to call the police, but he actually runs into Talia, who is beneath the stairwell.
Talia is completely out of it. She's dazed and unaware of everything. Her eyes are unfocused, and she has rope burn on her hands.
Well, does it surprise anyone that the next chapter involves Talia in St. Elizabeth's Hospital? She's admitted into their inpatient psychiatric unit. Is anyone surprised by this?
I am a little bit surprised because what the heck is St. Elizabeth's Hospital? I thought there was a Shadyside Hospital.
Well, this ghostwriter didn't read that book.
Or, maybe her, put-together parents found a better facility somewhere in, Central City or whatever. Whatever the case may be.
It could be just a psychiatric hospital.
Could be. There's a juvenile court hearing 3 weeks from now, and she's going to be released into the care of her parents as soon as the psychiatrists deem her safe to be released into society, which is, maybe never? I'm not sure. I mean, even Talia herself isn't sure about her own innocence. There are so many blank spots in her memory, but she's pretty sure that she liked Rudy too much to kill him.
But not Chandel. Seth comes to visit Talia just to chat. He's trying to be supportive, we've got your back, and we believe that you're innocent, and everything's going to be okay. And Talia is just really unsure.
But if she was unsure about Seth before, just wait till she looks out her window after Seth leaves, and she watches him as he walks out of the hospital and meets Mara in the parking lot, and they leave together.
So Talia's really suspicious of that. Did they do something to frame her so that they could get together?
Yeah, I mean, that's the only reasonable explanation, right? I mean, like, she knows Mara's been at her this whole time. All those secret whisperings and, like, googly eyes, they got him out to something. I mean, like, Shandell was about to warn her about the googly eyes, and then she died.
Goo eyes, not googly eyes.
After Talia's release, Seth gives her a new story to read at Thrill Club.
This one involves Talia having shrunken heads of her previous victims and brandishing a knife while demanding more trophies. Talia is, as expected, not happy with this idea. She thinks that no one wants to hear this from her. She's in no mood to do it. Her trial is in 2 weeks, and she just doesn't need any more things stacked against her.
I know, the prosecution would have a field day with this one.
Well, what Seth didn't tell her was that he invited her over and had called a Thrill Club meeting at the same time, and surprise, people are going to be coming for a Thrill Club meeting and they're expecting a story from her.
Yeah, she better have something. I mean, unless she has, like, another story in her back pocket, she just better read this one.
Well, Talia is very unhappy with this.
Yeah, but sounds like either she has to admit that she's been cheating this whole time, even though everyone already knows Talia.
Nessa and Mara show up, and it's super awkward because they don't believe she's as innocent as Seth may think that she is. Seth kind of manipulates the situation and kind of forces her into reading the story. And as Talia starts reading it, she gets more and more into it. And anything was better than the awkward conversations she was having with Nessa and Mara.
As she's reading it, she realizes that Seth is actually just listening to his Walkman and chanting along to something playing through his headphones. Talia suddenly starts getting a headache, and there's a buzzing noise in her head. As Nessa and Mara are getting more uncomfortable with the story, Talia starts blanking out. Talia hears a voice in her head telling her to grab the hacksaw and grab a new trophy.
First, the voice sends her after Mara, and then it tells her to avoid Nessa, who's trying to stop her. And there's actually a pretty intense fight sequence between the three girls as Talia is trying to kill Mara and then Nessa, and they're both trying to stop her from killing them, but also from killing the other person. And they're just, like, defending each other while fighting off each other. And it's actually, like, really cool.
Yeah, this is, like, really reminiscent of the Prom Queen, actually. It's almost like poetry, the way it mirrors the Prom Queen.
You mean the ghostwriter read the Prom Queen? They actually managed to get her on the ground and hold her down, and then the voice in her says that, you know what, it's just forget it, I'll do it myself.
So now Talia is back in control of her own body and confused as to what happened. Neither Mara or Nessa will let her go. They're holding her down, and they don't believe her as she's telling them, no, you gotta watch out for Seth, he's right behind you. But before anything can happen, Seth jumps up and grabs the phone, hacksaw in hand.
No one will escape. Seth's father escaped, but no one else will.
So they can't call the police because he, like, grabbed the phone and, like, ripped it out or whatever. And now they're all like, what?
No one will escape.
What does that even mean? No one has any idea what Seth is talking about.
No one will escape.
Now, he takes the cassette tape out of his Walkman and puts it into the tape deck in the room. Chanting fills the room.
The transfer tape, as it was called, is actually a mind transfer tape. If you chant along with the voices, your mind will float free from the body.
Seth's dad floated into someone else's body and never came back, and that's why he died.
Seth is, like, really upset that his dad chose to leave rather than stay.
He grabs a New Guinean knife off the wall and approaches the three girls.
He says that Talia never cared about him and only used him for math homework and writing horror stories.
True.
She was planning on dumping him for Rudy.
That's also true.
No, she said that Rudy was a friend and that Seth was boyfriend material as long as he wasn't depressed about his dad.
Well, yeah, but then she also said that she was just gonna, like, pretend to date him for a while and then just, like, let him off easy.
She was going to UC Berkeley. He wanted her to need him for more than just homework. He wanted her to have to stay, so he got in her head and made her murder Shandell and Rudy. Though technically, Shandell's death was an accident. She was supposed to use the joke knife. She just accidentally grabbed a real knife instead of the joke knife. But Rudy had to die because Seth saw them kissing.
And it's okay, because you know what? She was using him and he used her, so, you know, they're even now.
Yes, You use me for homework, I use you for murder. Tit for tat.
Yep, exactly. So now Nessa and Mara are trying to calm Seth down. They're like, yo, come on. Hey, look, put the knife down. We can get you some help. You obviously need a little help, and, we understand you went through some rough times, and, come on, buddy. But he just turns the volume up and starts chanting along with the transfer tape.
As they get together to rush him, he tells them it's too late, and then he collapses.
He is followed in his father's footsteps now and transferred into somebody's mind permanently.
A few weeks later, the court case is over. All the charges are dropped. They didn't believe the truth, but there's no proof against her, so she's in the clear.
There's no proof against her, I guess because her mom's such a good lawyer and, the police are intimidated by her. I'm not sure what's going on,
They didn't find the knife or the bloody sweatshirt or her DNA samples in the rope, but whatever.
Yeah, Mara drops off flowers to congratulate Dahlia, and Mara and Dahlia have a nice conversation about how Seth was a good guy before everything that happened, and how they miss him.
And then they make plans for later that night. The end.
Wow, what a story, but so much to dig into now. Why don't we look into how this affects the Fear Street mythos?
Apparently, there's a new cemetery on Old Mill Road.
Yeah, what's going on with that? As recently as the Cheerleader saga, the old cemetery was still being utilized. I guess they're finally running out of plots there? Is it realistic that they wouldn't have run out earlier? And why is it the first time we're hearing about the new cemetery? Up until now, pretty much everybody's been buried at the old Fear Street cemetery, so it's a little bit weird that Seth's father is buried out at the new one.
Do you think there's cachet to be buried at the Fear Street cemetery?
Pretty much everybody, despite where they come from or who they are, is pretty much has been buried there up till now.
Weird, because Seth's family lives on Fear Street,
right.
So...
Okay, so here's an interesting one, right? Seth's father might have left instructions specifically to not be buried there. If he knew ahead of time what he was doing, he would know that he'd be leaving a dead body behind, and maybe there's something about leaving the empty vessel of your soul behind after using the transfer tape that would be kind of inconducive to being left behind in
the blue clay?
Correct. He might have known something. There may be something going on that's deeper, way underneath, that we don't even realize here. I mean, this ghostwriter could be taking the Fear Street mythos to the next level. Or maybe he has no clue what's going on. I don't know.
I mean, it would be interesting if the corporation were sending anthropologists all across the world to figure out how to incorporate the superstitions and the mysticisms of other cultures into what they have on Fear Street. I mean, I did some research on Papua New Guinea and superstition, and they're very, very superstitious.
Correct, yes. Witchcraft is still practiced there.
White magic is allowed, black magic is not.
Yeah, this is their official law there. There are official punishments for black magic, although oftentimes it unfortunately falls upon vigilantes to carry out the punishments.
And they actually have a problem with vigilantes killing women in villages. It's actually left the rural villages and it's moved into their more urban areas as well. Yeah, it's really wild. I did a lot of research on this for this episode, and it's pretty crazy how pervasive it is.
So one can imagine if you combine the powerful ancient magic of Papua New Guinea, which, by the way, is one of the most ancient human cultures on this planet, dates back tens of thousands of years, and you couple that with the blue clay mineral living on Fear Street, he had ready access to that. If he somehow found a way to melt that, he could have powered up the transfer tape. We don't know. Where is Seth's dad right now?
Where is Seth right now?
Where are they? Whose bodies are they occupying? Perhaps permanently taking control?
Or where, or maybe when? Right. When are they? There's time travel.
Correct. These could be repeating characters we could see again in the future.
But that we won't know that they are who they are.
Or maybe, going back to the time travel idea, we've already seen them before and had no idea. I mean, this is crazy. The ghostwriter presumably had read all the Fear Street books and could have actually retroactively written Seth and his dad into previous characters by futureactively writing similar personalities to previous characters into Seth and his dad, knowing that in his story they would travel back in time. I mean, right? I mean, anything is possible at this point. And we also have Talia, a target, because maybe her dad wants to spruce up the public buildings and spaces of Shadyside through his architecture. There are certain things maybe you don't want to mess with.
Maybe the status quo of Shadyside is important to the corporation. Maybe things are feng shuied exactly how they need to be, and by doing anything like sprucing or rebuilding or adding will throw off just the channels of how the energy flows in Shadyside.
Well, it's not just the corporation. I mean, we're thinking about the balance of powers here between the corporation, the Fear family, and the natural forces of the blue clay. And we're thinking about this is a balance of power. And if you start coming in and trying to mess with stuff, you're going to upset the balance of power. All three factions are going to be dead set against you doing that. That is something you don't want to mess with. There could have been like an aspect of that going on where Talia has been targeted in order to send her father a message.
She got off scot-free because he got the message.
Exactly. We don't know, like her dad may have kissed the ring of the heads of the families of the three factions, and that could have been, what it took. That was kind of behind the scenes. We didn't see that. One more thing to mention here is we've heard about Canyon Road a couple times already. And by the way, we know there is a Canyon Road in Ohio just outside of
Columbus?
Jealous with our whole Ohio theory, but now all of a sudden there are massive home with 2 to 3 car garages on Canyon Road, and apparently it's not even hilly.
Yeah, I thought the North Hills were the rich people area. Was Canyon Road always traditionally like a rich people area?
No, because last time we heard about Canyon Road, it was kind of like out in the boonies, but you know what? I'm thinking like maybe this is less of a, mythos thing and more of urban sprawl type of deal,
That makes
You get
sense.
all these subdevelopments way out in the countryside, suddenly somebody's farm turns into like 30 houses. This is just the way things work.
There's one more thing, the Ohio thing. Talia mentions that Seth had been hoping that maybe they'd go to the state university together. And I was thinking like...
The Ohio State University, perhaps?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, because if they were in a state like New York, and he said, I was hoping that we could go to the state university together, there's so many state universities, like it'd be hard to pinpoint. But when you're talking about, when you're in a place when there's like only one state university, the Ohio State University.
They don't say the, they say the. They make such a big freaking deal out of it. Holy crap.
Go Blue. That's all I got for Fear Street Mythos.
Callbacks. We got Jade Smith, Dina Martinson from Prank Calls.
Actually, Wrong Number 2 is coming up soon.
Oh my god, there's a second wrong number?
Yeah.
What?
I guess they gotta make more prank calls.
No, but seriously, Jade Smith and Dina Martinson have been
the main callback for like every book.
It's been crazy. Like, I guess they're a fan favorite or something. I don't know what's going on. I think it's got a little bit to do with that cover. It's got those like 2 girls just relaxing in a bed. It's a little bit too sexy.
I can only think of our version of that cover where they're like staring at the canoe adventures thing at the laptop.
Well, they're watching a YouTube of the canoe adventures, on their like 1990s laptop, which is all tricked out and overclocked and somehow able to run like 1080p, but whatever.
90s things.
Yeah. Oh, so we got a lot of cassette tape type stuff going on over here.
Walkmans, tape decks.
Yep. Obviously, nobody listens to that kind of stuff nowadays, but hey, there's another thing that happens nowadays called cell phones, and nowadays police could have used cell phone location data to place Talia at the crime scene.
But she was already at the crime scene at Rudy's house.
Yeah, but I mean, at least at Chandel's crime scene. If the blood all over her sweatshirt and the knife in her sock drawer didn't prove it. So that actually kind of brings us into nitpicks. You know what? The first part, let's talk about Chandel. Black person dies first in a horror story. That's definitely a trope. Chandel dies without anyone paying the price for it.
There's really no police investigation. If you think about it, if the police had gotten a search warrant for all the kids' homes, I mean, is there precedent? Is there reason for a judge to put out the search warrants? I don't really know. Because you think about it, when they describe the scene of finding Chandel's body, they're walking in the cemetery and there's blood on the ground, so they all get like her blood on their shoes and on their clothing. So you can sort of wash away like the sweatshirt thing, like, oh, it was when I was at the crime scene earlier. At some point, there's gonna be like, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. Or they could like cross-examine the witnesses and be like, hey, how did the blood get on Talia's sweatshirt? And then somebody would have been like, oh, it was already bloody beforehand. Or how about, here's a novel idea. What you could do is actually just figure out that she had this written out story that literally was written by her, or so she claims, that involved the exact same thing happening. Chandel getting murdered right next to Fear Street Cemetery. It's a little bit suspicious. So immediately, like, even if it's not her, you gotta suspect everybody in the club that heard that story because, like, hey, maybe one of them's mentally imbalanced, the story made them think weird thoughts, and then the thing happened. So immediately, that story enough is probably reasonable cause to get a search warrant to search what the heck is going on.
But they also mentioned that all the judges are friends with Talia's mom, so no judge is going to issue a search warrant.
Yep, I mean, that's
basically,
how the world works.
If you're from a rich family with a lawyer
and you're well connected,
yep. I think it's the answer to that show, How to Get Away with Murder.
Are we all ignoring the fact that Seth and his dad are in, like, someone else's body and aren't themselves, like, actually dead? Like, their body is dead, but their mind is, like, in somebody else's body?
Yeah, it's a transfer tape, and Seth says, my dad has gone to another body, and he's gone to another body, and they're just, okay, well, that's fine.
So here's the weird thing, right? So is there a different chant for permanent transfer that causes your body to die versus the temporary transfer that Seth has been using throughout the book in order to temporarily transfer himself into Talia's body and make her, like, murder people?
In the last scene where we see it happen, it doesn't even seem like a mind transfer thing. It seemed more like a persuasive thing, you know, like the voice in your head is telling you to do something, but he himself was not doing it. You heard him encourage her to do things, but if it really were a mind transfer thing, then he could just do it himself.
I think it was different because he transferred out at the end, and she was able to actually recollect the memory. Because for the previous two, she had no recollection. She was really out of it, and that's probably because he stayed throughout the entire process. And in this one, he, like, pulled out halfway through. She was able to kind of remember it.
She wasn't able to remember anything. After he pulls out, she says she's wondering to herself, "Where am I? What is happening?" And then she asks Mara and Nessa, "What are you doing? You're hurting me. You're hurting my arms." Mara and Nessa are just, like, keeping her down, asking where the hacksaw is, and Talia's asking, "Hacksaw? What hacksaw? What's happened? Please, let me up." And she has no clue what's going on.
Oh, I see. Okay.
She still has no memory. Except this time she has people on top of her, holding her down and freaking out.
As soon as he leaves her mind, her memory of the event is wiped.
Right.
But the question still stands. That wasn't a permanent mind transfer. So what's the difference between a permanent mind transfer? Because think about it. When he transfers to her mind, his body's still there. It's breathing. It's fine. He's not dead. When he puts in the tape in the loudspeaker, and he, like, chants those final words, then he does transfer permanently, and his body collapses and he dies.
Maybe it's how you chant, or I have no clue.
It's like, how does he know not to chant the final few words to make the permanent mind transfer?
I mean, his dad was doing research on this. Maybe it's in the journals.
So the other question is, since he made everyone listen to the tape in the final scene, does that mean he must have jumped into one of the girls? Talia had to hear the chanting in order to fall victim to this at the beginning, or so it seems. So maybe he wanted to transfer into one of the other two girls, and that's why he had to put the tape on speaker. Or otherwise he could have just left it on his little Walkman.
But that doesn't make sense. I mean, what are you jumping bodies? Like, what are you accomplishing with this? Like, he doesn't need to jump into one of their bodies to do anything.
Or maybe he does. You know how at the end of the book, Mara gets really friendly with Talia? Isn't it a little bit mysterious since they were so antagonistic? Maybe he jumped into Mara's mind at the end, and now he's, like, sort of living vicariously through her and being friendly towards Talia.
I mean, that's one way to look at the scene, sure. But it just doesn't make sense as to why you would do that. If you had the power to jump into anyone's body, why would you do it to someone whose position that is very similar to yours, your same status, basically, in life?
It's something that involves you having to have them listen to the tape. You know, at that point in time, he had very little choice. He was probably about to go to jail. It was 3-on-1. They were going to overpower him. They were about to rush him. That was going to be that. He was cornered, and so he was going to have to jump into one of their minds, and he had to choose one. I guess he chose not Talia because he put the tape on the speaker.
But why not choose Talia? Like, why choose Mara? Like, why would you jump into a person who's living on Fear Street next door? I mean, we're told that if you live on Fear Street, you're not very rich, wealthy, you know, your status in society is not necessarily the highest. Talia's got everything going for her. She's going to UC Berkeley. She has a rich parents, a lawyer for a mom.
She has a rap sheet. It's a risky move jumping into her body when there's all kinds of evidence that she murdered 2 people already.
Well, why not jump into Nessa, who's like the
We
most
don't know
innocent...
anything about her.
Well, he knows about her.
Does he?
Yeah.
Thinking back to our character description of her, I think she had like a delicate face or something. That we know about one thing about her, and that's about it.
Yeah, well, just because we know about one thing about her doesn't mean he only knows one thing about her.
Okay. Yeah, he probably knows Mara better, so...
Easier to fake?
My guess is he jumped into Mara's body.
Well, that's an interesting twist to the ending.
There's some similarities to a show you've watched recently that I think you might want to discuss.
Yeah, it kind of reminded me of the OA. It's this Netflix original series. And the whole jumping of bodies thing. I mean, they have to chant to do it in this book. But in the OA, you have to do the 5 movements. It's similarly, you can just jump into the body of, well, I don't want to spoil too much, but you're jumping bodies to some degree. It involves alternate dimensions. So I was thinking, like, you know, your whole thing is like, well, maybe he's jumping into one of the girls. I'm thinking, like, they could just be jumping into an alternate dimension version of themselves and living life, you know, like that. Because it is like one of those things where, like, it's how do you stop death from happening? How do you end death?
Mm-hmm.
And, like, that's always been a thing for humans. What's a good way to not die? And if one way to not die is to jumping into another version of yourself via some sort of higher power, higher being, higher plane of existence by doing a move or a chant, eventually someone somewhere will figure it out. And how they figured out the movements in the OA was via NDEs, near-death experiences. So different people almost died, and during these, like, near-death experiences, like, something somewhere would give them, like, one of the movements to, like, put it all together. And, you know, the chants, how do you figure out, like, the words or the rhythm or the beats or, like, how to do it? Like, I don't know, but that's, like, an interesting way that they did it in the OA.
Yeah, that definitely sounds like a definite similarity.
Yes, the jumping bodies thing?
Yes.
It's a really good show. I think everyone should watch it. Season 2 is really amazing, guys. Highly recommend. Season 1 is kind of weird.
Now, back to the book. What did you think of this?
I thought the kill the black character first trope is a really sad way to go about dealing with your first actual person of color in the Fear Street series.
Perhaps apropos for a horror series that is
from the
like,
1990s.
Yeah, it's on brand.
It's not good though.
How many shrunken heads out of 5 would you give this book?
Probably give it 2. I don't know. It's really interesting. You know what we haven't talked about yet? How this isn't written by R.L. Stine. And, like, how do you think this book flows compared to the R.L. Stine books?
I think it's pretty similar. I think it's really interesting how the ghostwriter inserted himself into the story by having the story be about somebody fake writing stories for somebody else, insisting that that person use their stories rather than write their own, to the point where they would rather that person, like, call the parents of the person they had been forced to murder and confess the crime rather than write their own story. It was almost like, do you feel, like, really conflicted about writing for R.L. Stine here? Like, it felt kind of odd. Or maybe it was like a tongue-in-cheek kind of joke. I'm not sure. But anyway, I thought that was like a funny little reference there that you only get if you realize that this was ghostwritten. The only thing that really stood out is R.L. Stine has not had too much of a real occult sort of deal going on. The closest has been the Fear Street saga, Cheerleader saga, and also that one thing with the ghost. Haunted. So, other than that, it's always turned out to be like a somewhat reasonable explanation. But this one, like, really goes into a deep dive into this weird, like, occult thing of witchcraft from Papua New Guinea, which is, like, almost kind of believable. So, it's got a slightly different flavor.
I think there's a slightly different tone to it compared to R.L. Stine. I mean, first of all, you have a person of color, but I think the way the characters think, like their internal monologue, for instance, you know, in an R.L. Stine book, the girl always thinks, he's so good looking. And that phrase specifically, I always associate with R.L. Stine because no one actually thinks like that. And you don't see anything like that here. Just the way that they describe each other. Like, there's still the cattiness to it that R.L. Stine has, but, like, the way they think seems more human than...
Oh, right. Nobody's described as, like, a movie character or...
Oh, no, not just
like
that. It's just, like, it's, like, the thought process, like, he's so good looking. I'm so attracted to him. Those kind of statement-like things that just aren't normal in a human thought process, I think. There is something, like, more real to this book than the other books, just in terms of, like, how characters behave and think. And I also think, like, tonally, there's something about R.L. Stine, his writing For instance, like, you know how
Is
he has
divinely inspired?
Yes.
Does R stand for robot?
Are you stealing something from another podcast? He has a weird sense of humor. You know, he was like a joke writer and he wrote comedy back in the 80s before he wrote Fear Street. And like he sort of inserted his like really weird sense of humor into Fear Street. And I don't think it always clicked. Whereas in this book, there was none of that weird quippy things that he does. And it felt more real to me than other Fear Street books, even though it was about a transfer tape from Papua New Guinea, you know? It was just something about the way the characters interacted with each other, how they thought, how they presented themselves, how situations felt more organic and conversations felt more organic. I think that's something that I did notice. Like, even before I knew it was ghostwritten, I felt like there was something off with this book.
Yeah, it was a little bit different. I would actually probably give it about 1.5 shrunken heads out of 5. You know, the hacksaw slipped a little bit on that second one and like ended up slicing it in half instead of slicing it to the neck. You know, I guess the dividing line between like 2 or less than 2 is this really a good segue into the entire Fear Street series? I feel like it's different enough that it's not really representative of the rest of the Fear Street series. It's therefore not a good entry point into it. So I wouldn't really give it a full 2 stars. If you've already read a few Fear Street books, then certainly this is not a bad place to end up. It's not by any stretch of the imagination the worst one I've ever read. It's fine, but it also doesn't stand out as being like a true shining representative of like the best that Fear Street could be in that special way that Fear Street is. So yeah, it's kind of like a middle of the road Fear Street novel, a little bit of an oddball, slightly out there, maybe because of the ghostwriting, although I'm not gonna go like ding it for being ghostwritten. I think it adds, like Anna mentioned, like a certain flavor that's a little different and it switches things up a little bit. And I certainly look forward to seeing a few more ghost-written Fear Street stories in the future. I mean, see where that goes.
Can I ask a question? I'm not like a tool person. Unless you're holding someone down, can you actually do damage with like a hacksaw?
What do you mean?
So like Seth has the hacksaw in the end and the 3 girls are all like with it, unless he like grabs one of them and starts like sawing away, which wouldn't happen because the other 2 would have like pushed him off immediately. Could he actually, aside from wave the hacksaw around and like maybe give them cuts, hurt them?
No, he could scratch or cut them and that's about it. He was done for. I mean, they were about ready to bum rush him when he like basically collapsed and left his body. So yeah, he was done for. The hacksaw's not a real weapon. Not actually. It's meant for cutting really tough objects.
And was his plan at the end just to have Talia kill both Nessa and Mara?
I mean, not if all she had was a hacksaw.
So, like, that doesn't make sense unless he was going to help her, but I guess he couldn't because he was chanting. So, like, there was no way that was going to work in the first place.
Yeah, so the actual way to, like, behead somebody is with, like, a knife, because that cuts through flesh a lot faster than a hacksaw. Yeah, you might need a hacksaw to cut through bone, but actually, you know, like, vertebra are already pre-separated for you, so you just gotta wedge the knife in between 2 of them and you're good to go. I'm not really convinced that a hacksaw was necessary in this case.
Well, that's a disturbing revelation from you.
I haven't put like a lot of thought into this. This is just like me off the cuff, you know what I mean? I'm not like a beheading expert. You know what you can do? You can kill them first by cutting their throat.
Right.
And then later come back with a hacksaw once they're dead and not struggling any longer. So at the end of the day, start with a knife, finish off with a hacksaw.
You know, I don't
Everyone
feel
goes home
comfortable
happy.
like saying this on this podcast. But my question was just like, I feel like the
Pro
plan,
tip. If you want to murder somebody...
I don't think Seth's plan was very well thought out.
No, he's stupid. Whatever. This is why I gave it like 1.5 stars. There's so much that doesn't make any kind of sense. How about the next book? Coming up, we got Fear Street, One Evil Summer.
Chrissy is perfect. Perfectly evil.
So what we got on the cover here is this girl in like night clothing. It's like a white night dress type of deal. She's holding up her cat by the cat's torso and she's laughing either happily or maniacally. And there's a window and there's a lighthouse in the background across a body of water and there's a full moon. And she's like barefoot.
So what do you think is happening?
I'm thinking Lighthouse is probably not on Fear Street, so it's gotta be like a vacation of some kind. Probably out by the sea once again. We've got a girl and her cat. She really loves her cat, but everybody else thinks her cat is actually evil and causing all kinds of mischief. But I actually think that the real reason for all the mischief is this girl's summer boyfriend. We've had the whole summer boyfriend thing going on, so you know what? This time the summer boyfriend's evil. I'm gonna say murderer male, murderer weapon is going to be strangulation, and murder victim gender will be female.
So I said that it's summer vacation, probably in Massachusetts, and a girl named Chrissy is doing a good job pretending to everyone that she's a goody two-shoes, but she's actually an evil witch because she has a cat. Chrissy isn't the main character, she's the main antagonist to our protagonist, who is probably a female. Chrissy looks maniacal on the cover, so I think she's actually off her rocker. There is something horribly wrong with her, and she does a good job hiding it from everyone except whoever the main character is. You know, it'd be really cool if the main character were the cat. That would be a nice twist.
Yeah, that would be pretty nice.
The murder weapon is some sort of witchcraft, and the murderer gender is female, and the victim is male.
All right, well, our predictions are locked in place and cannot be changed. We will see you next time.
Thanks for listening, guys.
Bye. We hope you enjoyed this episode of RetRead Podcast.
Join us again as we continue our journey down Fear Street.
We love hearing from you guys, so feel free to reach out to us at RetRead Podcast on Twitter and Facebook.
Email us at ret.read.podcast@gmail.com.
Don't forget to like, rate, and subscribe.
Once again, thanks for listening. See you again soon.